Let me just say this. Last week was my best week of the year in terms of money line picks and best bets, but I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, I am pissed off. And no, I'm not pissed off at my Cleveland Browns for the worst clock management I've ever seen. No, I'm not pissed off at my favorite team, the Philadelphia Eagles, for getting absolutely stunned by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I told you that would happen. No, I'm not pissed off at the fact that on my birthday, September 29th, I watched the two worst tackling teams in football, that being the Philadelphia Eagles. I got my favorite team since Donovan McNabb was the first person I ever saw play football, and then my hometown Cleveland Browns. I am located in Cleveland, Ohio. No, I'm not pissed off that those are the two worst tackling teams in football, and they both got beat down on my birthday. What I am pissed off about is that I recorded last week's Brandon's World Best Bets Wednesday morning. At the time of the recording, I had Atlanta minus 1.5. By the time I locked in my bet on FanDuel, which was right after the recording, the line had moved from Atlanta 1.5 to Atlanta 2.5. And I still like the number, so I went ahead and bet it. The issue is obviously the Alvin Kamara touchdown, the Young Koo field goal. Atlanta only wins by two, and therefore, technically, Brandon's World went 5 for 5 in best bets last week. I went Atlanta minus 1.5, Cincinnati minus 4.5, Minnesota plus 2.5, Jacksonville plus 7, and Detroit last night at minus 3.5. However, like I said, I didn't get the Atlanta number earlier enough when I put in my bet on FanDuel, so I got it at 2.5. Atlanta only won by two, and therefore I did not win any money in my parlay. Yes, I am pissed off about it, but nonetheless, technically, like I said, Brandon's World did go 5 for 5 in best bets last week. That puts us at 13 for 20 on the year in best bets, which is the same pace as for week 4 a year ago. So I'm happy with that. In the money line, we're starting to gain momentum. I went 12 and 4. And by the way, the Eagles and Browns were two losses that I missed. The other two were the Jets in Denver and Commanders in Arizona. So, very good week for me in the money line. I'm now 37 and 27 in the money line, which puts us 10 games above 500. Last year, we were 20 games above 500 at this time for the year at 42 and 22. So we're going to obviously have to make up 5 games of ground here, but very good week for me picking games. Well, let's dive into the recap. Let's start with that flag fest that was Thursday Night Football. Cowboys beat down the Giants. Brian Dable went very conservative with Daniel Jones as his quarterback. The Giants kicked 5 field goals. Dallas could barely get a run game going, but the one thing they did do was they stopped Devin Singletary. They stopped the run. Now, I did say this when it came to the Cowboys that, week 1, they stopped the Browns because the Browns don't know how to run the football without Nick Chubb. Then they faced Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry, who were two very good backs. And then I said they were going to go in on a short week. They were going to beat down Devin Singletary and the New York Giants. Now they get Pittsburgh, and then they get Detroit's running game after that before going into a bye and then getting San Francisco's running game. I say this all to say, yes, the Cowboys are 2-2. Yes, they got CeeDee Lamb the football. No, they are not a more explosive team. No, I don't feel better about Dallas moving forward. Yes, I feel like the Dallas Cowboys are going to be 2-4. And no, I don't feel better about the New York Giants. Listen, Malik Neighbors is a great eraser for that offense, but that's all they have. If you triple team Malik Neighbors, nobody else in that team can separate from man coverage. Dallas finally decided to put Diggs and a safety over the top on Malik Neighbors. The Giants cannot move the ball. Situation late third quarter, early fourth quarter, they were down at the Dallas 5 yard line. They decided to take a field goal instead of going for the touchdown because they don't trust Daniel Jones. Again, the Giants, listen, they were very competitive in 3 out of their 4 games this year. They're 1-3. They're about where they should be. I had Dallas at 2-2 in my early season predictions. I had them starting 2-5 because I had them losing to Pittsburgh, Detroit, and San Francisco. I do think I'm going to be right on that account. Okay, listen, I picked Philly because I told you it was my birthday and I wanted them to win. And I was picking for heart, but I told you if I was, realistic, I would bet Tampa plus 2.5. I told you this game could get ugly, and it got ugly early. Midway for the second quarter, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had 255 yards. The Philadelphia Eagles had zero. Now obviously the offense has problems. Jalen Hurts turning the football over is a disaster at this point. 27 turnovers the last 2 years, leads the league. I don't understand it, but even more concerning than my offense because Philly did get back in the game at this point. It was, 27-14. They had an opportunity to go down. Obviously, the fumble, Jalen Hurts' presence in the pocket against Todd Bowles in that blitz, not great. It was a disaster. But I think to me, the bigger concern is not even Nick Sirianni, because again, that game just got so out of hand so quickly. I think Philadelphia was just so banged up. You had the bye looming. They just didn't want to be there in Tampa in that 108-degree heat. You could see it from the first snap of the game. The main concern is the no adjustments on defense. No pressing the receivers. Baker Mayfield, who I told you after he lost to Denver last week, would have the game of his life against my Philadelphia Eagles because when he sees green, that's all he does is play well. I said Mike Evans was going to have a good game. I said Chris Godwin was going to have a good game. And Tampa just destroyed the Philadelphia defense on the edge. Darius Slay, Iwi Ringo, you know, Quinyon Mitchell. It did not matter who they put on the outside. Isaiah Rodgers, Vontae Maddox in the slot. Tampa just destroyed them for the passing game. Quick, get the ball out like the New York Giants used to do against the Eagles days back when Jim Schwartz was the defensive coordinator. 1-2, boom. 1-2, boom. Get the ball out. Boom, 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 boom. And the tackling. Oh my God, the tackling. They had guys in the backfield and they just could not wrap. They were diving at people. They were trying to just tackle with their arms. Nobody wanted to tackle. And so they have 2 weeks to stir. They have 2 weeks to get this right. My team has to put the pads on, and they have to come ready because if they don't beat the Browns week 6 in Philadelphia, this train could roll out the tracks. Saying that, though, 3 out of the next 4 games, you got the Browns, you got the Giants, you got Cincinnati, and you got Jacksonville. If Philly can go 3-1 in that stretch, which would include, in my opinion, defeating Cleveland and Jacksonville at home and going on the road and beating the division rival Giants and Saquon Barkley's return to MetLife Stadium, if that happens, I think Philadelphia can get back on track here and be 5-3 essentially midway through the season. Obviously, there's 17 games now, but they have an opportunity here to get better. I think that was just a bad matchup. Nick Sirianni's job's on the line. I understand that and everything that comes with it. But I also thought that spot, that banged up, Tampa Bay is turning into Seattle, which is Philadelphia's house of horrors. Tampa Bay may now be more of a house of horrors than Seattle. Philadelphia has always struggled when they've gone down to Tampa, and that game was just ugly. Okay, so as I alluded to before, Atlanta dominated the Saints. They were up by 3 points, they were up by 6 points the whole game. And then the last drive, Alvin Kamara and the Saints just walk in for a touchdown. Now, Atlanta did get a pick six in this game. They did get a dropped punt, special teams down in the end zone for a touchdown in this game. So, Kirk Cousins did not look great. The Saints definitely made adjustments in the second half on this game. But this is kind of the games that we expect, right? I've always said that Atlanta and New Orleans are always going to get 2 3-point games. Atlanta typically wins at home. New Orleans typically wins at home, specifically in that Matt Ryan, Drew Brees era. And now I think we're getting the Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr era of games where they're still very close. But I said, and the reason why at the time I picked Atlanta -1.5, and again I got him at 2.5, which cost me money. Still can't believe it. But I said, New Orleans is 2-1, Atlanta's 1-2. Atlanta's got Tampa Bay coming up at home on a short week on Thursday night. Then they have to go to Carolina. New Orleans obviously at Kansas City. They could start 2-0 and go to 2-3. But I thought if the Saints are 3-1 and Atlanta's 1-3 and Tampa's 3-1, Atlanta was in trouble. And that's what I based my pick off of. I was right on that. The Falcons needed the game more. And again, the Saints, I thought they were going to be one of the worst teams in the league this year. They started off odd 2-0. They surprised everybody out of the gate with Carolina and Dallas. Philadelphia brought them back down to earth in week 3. I think Atlanta and Kansas City will bring this team back down to earth. They may not be as bad as I projected them to be. They may be, around 7, 8 wins, but I don't think that this juggernaut is the best team in the league. Um, Cincinnati. Now their defense is still concerning. They gave up 24 points to Andy Dalton, who is looking competent as the quarterback of the Carolina Panthers. But, Jamar Chase, he did have that incredible touchdown where he basically broke 3 tackles and went all the way to the end zone, but he only had 2 catches the rest of the game. So there is still some signs in Cincinnati's armor that they're not as good as what we all thought they would be. They show signs of it. Their offense was still very explosive. They put up 34 points. They win the game 34-24. But there was guys open on the Panthers. Andy Dalton moved the ball. There wasn't a ton of pressure on Dalton in this game. And, again, you give 24 points to the Panthers. I don't know how good their defense is. And now you got Lamar Jackson rolling into town for a critical game between the 2-2 Baltimore Ravens and the 1-3 Bengals. Because if Pittsburgh defeats Dallas and Cincinnati loses to Baltimore, the Bengals are in trouble of not only not winning the AFC North, but missing the postseason as a whole. Speaking of Pittsburgh, I said Indianapolis was the more desperate team. They're going to win the game. Now, they did win it 27-24. Indy was up 17-0 at one point in this game. Pittsburgh outscores them, 24-10. The rest of the way, Justin Fields got going in the second half. They started finally throwing George Pickens the football and using Najee Harris in the run game. But I think the story of this game is on the Indianapolis side. Anthony Richardson gets hurt, has a hip injury, goes out, and the next play they run a zone read with him, and he gets hurt again, and down goes Anthony Richardson. And that was the best game he had played up until this point. Joe Flacco comes in, but I gotta tell you, just like Joe Flacco did with Cleveland last year with Indianapolis, Flacco comes in, he steadies the ship, he's running the RPO game with Shane Steichen, and again, while Indianapolis' offense kind of slowed down, I thought part of that had to do with TJ Watt and the pressure Pittsburgh was putting on Indianapolis with that defensive line. And I think if Anthony Richardson's out this week, they have a very desperate Jacksonville team. And that is an interesting game because the Colts now, after starting 0-2, they have won 2 in a row, starting to get some momentum. And you have Jacksonville, who at 0-4 should be 1-3. They outplayed the Houston Texans for most of the game. The issue for the Jaguars is they don't have much of a back end, and the Texans have CJ Stroud, and they have Nico Collins, and they have Stephon Diggs, who had a rushing touchdown in that game. And even without Joe Mixon, a loser way out of the backfield, obviously the game-winning touchdown there. Houston wins the game 24-20. And the Jaguars season right now is again on the line. I don't know what the line is right now for the Colts and Jaguars game next week that will take place in Jacksonville. But I got to tell you right now, again, I have a strong lead towards the Jaguars because I think if you would have told any football fan that the last winless team this year would be the Jacksonville Jaguars, that would shock you. I mean, again, Trevor Lawrence has regressed. Now, last year, or last week, I should say, against Houston, he did play well. He had the best game of his, season on Sunday. Jacksonville's offense moved the ball. They had control of the game. They kept Houston's offense down for most of the game without Joe Mixon. But the Texans just found a way to win. And Jacksonville has now lost a close game to Miami that they should have won. They should have beat Houston. They arguably could have beat Cleveland if, a couple mistakes would have went their way and Trevor Lawrence didn't take that safety to Myles Garrett. So the Jaguars should, in my opinion, at worst be 2-2. They could be 3-1, and here they are at 0-4. So again, as I said last week, at 0-4, you're not going to make the playoffs. Now Indianapolis has won. Now Tennessee has beaten Miami, and you can make a real argument if the Bears defense didn't come to play and Will Levis didn't happen for the Titans against the Bears and the Jets, that Tennessee could be 3-1. You could also, I could argue, make the case that a 3-1 Texans team could be 2-2. So there's a lot of close games in this AFC South division. And I don't know what to make of Jacksonville. I just think their season's on the line once again. I've been saying it for the last 2 weeks. They played better against Indianapolis. The question is, when are they going to get that win? For Houston, their offense does not look great. Now, maybe that's the loss of Joe Mixon. I don't know. Looks like they're going to get him back this week. Uh, but Nico Collins is their best receiver. Stephon Diggs has had an impact, not a huge impact. He did get a rushing touchdown, but he's made plays for them. They've essentially lost Tank Dell. Now, he was out last week, week 4, but in my opinion, they don't really need Tank Dell. They haven't thrown to him a lot this season. He's kind of been lost in the offense, but they just don't have those explosive plays that they had a year ago, and their defense isn't getting as consistent stops as they were a year ago. They don't look as dominant as people, I think, were thinking when it came to Houston in this AFC South division. Um, what can I say about Broncos Jets other than that game was a disaster? I don't know what it was. I said I was not going to bet it. A lot of people said the Jets were going to dominate Denver. I just said the number at 7.5 was way too high. And listen, Aaron Rodgers looked bad. The Jets kicked 3 field goals and they missed one that could have won the game, but Bo Nix got a touchdown. Bo Nix had 65 yards passing. He was 12 of 25. Nobody can move the ball in that game. It was a monsoon at MetLife Stadium. And the Jets defense, again, they played well. How many times are you going to give up 10 points a game and lose unless you're the 2023 New England Patriots? For what the Jets have spent on offense with their running back in Brees Hall, you got Mike Williams, you got Garrett Wilson. Conklin now is starting to come on as a tight end. The offensive line was a disaster on Sunday. And Aaron Rodgers, again, looked very good against New England. He looked like vintage Rodgers. He was moving around, making passes off platform. He looked very uncomfortable in that game against Denver, and it looked like to me Robert Saleh and him are not on the same page with some of the communications. Saleh has said post game about the snap count and the cadence and accountability and all that. The Jets. Now they go to London this week against the Vikings, and the Vikings, they got off to this torrid start, 28-0 against Green Bay. Former Jets quarterback Sam Darnold, in my opinion, after Buffalo's loss to Baltimore on Sunday night, does look like the MVP of the National Football League right now. I said it before the year. There was a chance this could happen. It's happening. Now, I think the Vikings sort of let their foot off the gas against Green Bay. Who knows? Maybe Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love finally found some rhythm there. There's a reason why I took Minnesota plus 2.5 in this game. I said Jordan Love's first game back against a Brian Flores-led defense was not a great idea for Green Bay. I would have brought him back against the Rams this coming week. But nonetheless, it is a very interesting game, right? Minnesota gave up a lot of points in the second half, but now they got to take on a Jets team who at 2-2, you can make the argument should be 3-1, and they are desperate. and they don't want to fall too behind Buffalo in this division. I think now we know it's a two-horse race between the Bills and the Jets. Miami's season is completely over. They don't have a quarterback. So London games are weird. We know the Jets have the defense to match up with Minnesota's receivers. Jordan Addison got back for them. Just imagine when they get TJ Hockenson back. But the Vikings are 4-0. To me, there's no pressure on the Vikings right now. There is pressure on the New York Jets. So just keep that in mind, even though it is a London game. And again, weirder things have happened. Okay, Rams at the Bears. I said the Bears again. They're 1-2, but they're at home. Caleb Williams, even though he has not played great, and Jayden Daniels is leading, NFL history in completion percentage for the first 4 weeks. I said, you watch Chicago. They are getting better. And I said the Rams are just too beat up. It was a tough ask for them to have an emotional win against San Francisco where they had to make that incredible comeback. Now they go all the way to the East Coast, taking a Bears team, which is pretty good defensively. And that's exactly what you saw. Bears win 24-18. They finally got DeAndre Swift going. Caleb Williams did not turn the football over. And this was a big milestone win, in my opinion, for Chicago. That could all be erased next week if they fall to the Carolina Panthers. So there's that. I just think the Rams, no Cooper Kupp, no Puka Nakua, no offensive line. I like Philadelphia this week against Tampa Bay. Their hands are kind of tied behind their back. Better effort by the Rams, but at 1-3, and now you got Green Bay at home. A mad Green Bay who has not won a game this year when Jordan Love has started. I think the Rams could go to 1-4, and their season just may be doomed by injury. There's a team every year that their season is costly by injury. I think this year that is the Rams in the NFC, it's Miami in the AFC. How about the Commanders? I was shocked by this. I thought Jayden Daniels, after that tremendous performance against Cincinnati, there would be some regression back to the mean. Arizona had played so well. Jonathan Gannon knew Washington from his time in Philadelphia, but this is a new Washington team, right? Led by offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, running a lot of new schemes down there. You got Dan Quinn leading the charge on defense, mostly being a CEO like head coach, walking around, making sure everybody's on the same page. And I think Cliff Kingsbury, I overlooked this a little bit. Yes, he was returning to Arizona, but he was obviously a coach that knew Kyler Murray throughout, knew his strengths, knew his weaknesses. I think that was advantage Washington, who now at 3-1 for the first 4 weeks of the season is the NFC East leader. Now, yes, I did predict the Washington Commanders to go 9-8. I thought they would get into the playoffs. I thought Jayden Daniels would have a very good year. I did not expect this. Do you know he has more touchdown passes this year, him being Jayden Daniels, than completions? Absolutely phenomenal for the Washington Commanders. Does this have a little bit of an RG3 feel to it? Yes. But I feel like the defense is better, and I feel like RG3 did not pop on the scene this early. Remember, he did week 1 against New Orleans, but then there was a little bit of a regression. They started 3-6 before rallying out those 7 straight wins to win the NFC East that year. And then obviously he gets hurt in the playoff game. I think that Washington, again, they are starting to build momentum. They have better weapons, I think, than people think. Zach Ertz has started to come on a tight end, and they look really good. I would not be surprised if they are right in the thick of the NFC East. The Philly at Washington, week 16, could decide the division. They also have a week 11 Thursday night game. I know my man Austin Arnold is proud of his Commanders, and we're going to have him on prior to that week 11 game. San Francisco just beat New England 30-13. I mean, I said there was a chance that San Francisco could struggle offensively. Maybe New England backdoor covers here. The line was 10. There's not really a lot to discuss about this game. San Francisco gets back on track. How about Rashid Rice going down to that interception by Patrick Mahomes? And again, this is the same story for the Chiefs over and over again. They don't look good. They don't play well. They still win games. Now Kareem Hunt actually got 11 carries in this game, to my shock. I thought he was going to be a little bit of a rotation guy in there with Steele and P. Ryan. But to me, Kareem Hunt already looks like the lead back going into Kansas City. He already knows the playbook. Patrick Mahomes has trust with him. And now, without Rashid Rice, I know there's a lot of speculation out there. Would Kansas City consider trying to get Tyreek Hill back? I don't think that's in the cards for them. I think Travis Kelce is obviously going to have to step up, but will they go to a two running back system? I think Xavier Worthy, the rookie, is now more valuable. He's going to get more plays. But will they go to Carson Steele in the backfield, Kareem Hunt at slot wide receiver to try to take some of those reps that Rashid Rice was getting? For the Chargers, I said, no Joel, no Rashawn Slater. It's going to be rough for an immobile Justin Herbert. They got off to the 10-0 start. Kansas City is now 12-0 when trailing by exactly 10 points, in the Patrick Mahomes era. Score 17 unanswered. Chargers could not move the ball in the second half. It was just a beat up Charger offensive line that could not block Chris Jones and company. They have a bye week coming up. And for the Chargers, you knew this to start their season. You knew they had to start 2-0. You knew they'd probably go into the bye week 2-2. Now you can hopefully get Justin Herbert going. Again, they're going to be competitive. They're well coached. They're just not on Kansas City's level yet. But you saw, I think, a start of something potentially building there with the Chargers. Listen, I gotta be honest with you. Being in Cleveland, watching the Browns offensive line without Vegas having Max Crosby get absolutely worked was a sight to see. But I want to talk about the end of this game because, Dustin Hopkins misses an extra point for the Browns. That's why the score is 20-16 and not 20-17. Gardner Minshew had a good game, even without Devontae Adams. They got Tucker involved. They got Jacoby Myers involved. Brock Bowers, not so much. A little bit of a surprise to me. But in the end, the Browns' offensive line after the first drive was a disaster. And they did go a touchdown back on Amari Cooper. I actually thought if you looked back at the hold on Nick Harris, it was the right call. But what I want to talk about was the end of the game because it was 4th and 3. And instead of calling a timeout, and the Browns had all three timeouts, there was like a minute left on the clock. The Browns could have called a timeout, kicked a field goal, been down one, played defense, got the ball back with like 30 seconds left, no timeouts, a chance to go down and get in field goal range and potentially win the game. They could have called a timeout and they could have went for it. What did Kevin Stefanski do? You ask? Kevin Stefanski decided to draw the Raiders offsides, which they obviously did not do. They were well disciplined, well coached by Antonio Pierce. While the clock was running, I couldn't believe it. I was screaming in my basement, "What the hell are you doing?" That was inept coaching. It was bad. The Browns are just a disaster. I don't even have the energy today to yell about it even more because that was one of the worst coaching decisions I've ever seen in terms of clock management in my life. There's a minute left on the clock. You either call timeout, kick a field goal, make it a 1-point game, or you call timeout and go for it. You still have 2 timeouts, you can get the ball back. They wasted about 30 seconds of clock so that by the time they went for it and didn't get it, the Raiders could just take a knee because the clock was under 40 seconds. I just, I don't know. That was the Browns had that game. They lost the game. Browns are gonna brown. Listen, Lamar Jackson's very hard to stop. Buffalo's still a very good team. Derrick Henry got rolling. It was just a good night for the Ravens. This was the Ravens team as they won 35-10. that we've known to fall in love with in the regular season, but they will disappoint us in the postseason. We'll see if they can build on that momentum. No worry for Buffalo. I thought their offense still looked good. I thought Josh Allen had a very good night. There was moments in the second half where Buffalo could get back in the ball game. They just could not tackle Derrick Henry. Listen, I don't want to spend a lot of time on Titans Dolphins. Titans win at 31-12. Honestly, who cares? Miami has Snoop Huntley. Will Levis went down. Mason Rudolph is at least a confident quarterback. We said this. If Tennessee doesn't turn the football over, they should be 3-1. Miami season's over. I mean, they should have lost week 1 to Jacksonville, and that was their only win of the year. Tua obviously goes down week 2 against Buffalo. But then after that, Skylar Thompson, Tim Boyle, Snoop Huntley. Miami just has no rhythm on offense. And maybe it's a credit to Tua. Maybe this means that Tua is a better quarterback than we think. Though, again, he wasn't playing that well to start with. And Miami, a lot like Philadelphia and Jacksonville, those are the 3 teams in the league right now that started off so hot last year that their momentum has sort of continued into this year of collapsing. And there's talk of, Nick Sirianni and Doug Peterson being on the hot seat. I realize he doesn't have his quarterback, but at what point are we going to say Mike McDaniel and the Miami Dolphins are just front runners? Miami goes to New England this week, and with Gerard Mayo and that New England defense, I got to tell you, for some odd reason, I feel like the Patriots should be favored and they should win. That's how bad it's gotten for the Miami Dolphins. And then I had Jared Goff last night, 18 for 18, almost 300 yards. Detroit able to run the ball down Seattle's throats. Geno Smith passing nearly 60 times, even though Kenneth Walker got in the end zone 3 times. Detroit wins at 42-29 in a shootout. And this is kind of the same thing that's been happening with these two teams the last 3 times they meet. 45-42, 35-32. Both of these offenses cannot be stopped. These defenses are getting bled over. I thought the fumble early in the game by Tyler Lockett was big. That turned into a Detroit Lions touchdown. Seattle got no pressure on Jared Goff all night besides the safety at the end of the game. Obviously DK Metcalf had a good night. So did Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, though. Again, when Jared Goff is clean, warm weather in a dome, they got the run game going. You can see the ability of Jared Goff and that Detroit Lion offense who is starting to look like they're getting back to their identity. But I said this about Seattle, and they got the Giants this week, and it's going to be tough for the Giants to go into Seattle and win. Probably going to be my survivor pick this week, just the way San Francisco was last week. I said this about Seattle. They can beat bad teams. They beat Denver and Bo Nix in his first start. They beat New England, and they beat Miami without a quarterback. I said the Lions were going to be their first real test of the year. I don't know how good they really are. They got San Francisco coming up week 6 in Seattle. That will be a great test for that team. Their first real home test of the season, divisional game. So we'll see how good they are. You certainly see the talent on Seattle, at least on the offense side of the ball. And Geno Smith has been very good this year. I just feel like compared to their division, if the Rams are out, these Sean McVay always runs over the Seahawks, it feels like. I still love Arizona's talent, though I may be overrated that a little bit. We'll see how they can bounce back against Washington. We'll just have to see about Seattle. If they're a for real 3-0 or not. They still feel like, to me, a 7-8 win team. And that win last night by Detroit is one of the reasons why a lot of people, including myself, had the Lions as the number 1 seed in the NFC going into the postseason. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.